Hello, everyone. Good evening. If you're joining from India or these parts, if you're joining in from North America, good morning to you. And if you're in Oceania, you're in Australia, late in the evening. But if you've joined in, thank you for that. My name is Ajay Ramasubramaniam, founder and CEO of Startup Rezo. Thanks for making time to join us. And I'd also like to say a big thank you to our panelists who I'll introduce in a brief moment. Uh, this is basically a kickoff of Startup Bridge GCC. Startup Bridge is a series of cross-border international market access programs that we've been operating for a while. We've been looking at opportunities that are coming up of interest to companies who are looking to go global. And I think the way GCC is kind of heating up, I wouldn't even say warming up, heating up in terms of not so heating up in terms of temperature as we get into December, but in terms of business opportunities and the overall economic viability and economic opportunities. I think if you look at the next 5 to 10 years, the amount of investments predicted, the kind of action on the ground expected in terms of business environment, I think GCC is right up there. And we thought this was a good time to kind of kick off our next edition or next series of Startup Bridge programs, and that what kind of brings us to Startup Bridge GCC. Today, we have an interesting panel set up. We are calling it Opportunity GCC, and we brought in people who are either conducting businesses in the region or are based out of the extended region to share their perspectives in terms of the opportunities that exist, in terms of the business environment, their own perspectives as businesses, the do's and don'ts, so that when we actually do a kickoff of Startup Bridge GCC, the companies which see this as an opportunity, they can make the decision to kind of sign up and we get talking. So I'll take a brief moment to introduce our panelists for the day. We have with us Ravi Shankar Gupta, the founder and CEO of SafeXPay. We have Daniel Verroch, Sales Director for the EMEA region at Techstars. And we have Mayank Singh, the Head of Global Sales at Zimio. So we are flanked by, Daniel is flanked by two folks who are working with startups. And Daniel himself has spent several years working with startups, emerging technology companies, who are looking to make the extended GCC region their home or to grow, while Ravi and Mayank have successfully scaled their businesses in the region. So hoping to make this an interesting conversation. Before we dive into the panel, I would quickly like to give an overview of who we are as Startup Rezo, so that kind of sets a broader context. So Rahul, if you can bring up the slides on Startup Rezo, I can give a quick walkthrough and then dive into the questions. Okay, as we're still kind of, okay, there you go, the slides are. You can move on to the next one, Rahul. So, okay, as we figure out digital and as we figure out technology, which is a boon and a bane, Startup Rezo as a company, the name itself is made up of two words. Very clearly, the first one is the more obvious one. We engage with startups, we work with startups. Rezo is a French word for network. And our business is essentially built on four verticals or four pillars, which leverages our network that we have built over the years, over the past decade. And startups are at the core of everything we do. And startups is a very loose term, I would say. I would rather prefer calling them emerging technology companies. And our business is built on the verticals of the first one being enterprise, working with large corporations who are building their own digital strategy and innovation agenda, working with them to co-create corporate-backed accelerators and innovation labs. That's kind of bread and butter for us. Our second vertical is capital. We are pretty much focused on the African continent as the one market where we want to start deploying early stage pre-seed money. To that effect, we spun out a separate company called Hindsight Ventures 3 years back, which by itself is building out accelerator programs on the continent. And that's the region where we want to start deploying early stage pre-seed money in companies that go through our programs. Our third vertical, which is the more interesting one in context of today's conversation, markets. We work with governments in co-creating inbound and outbound market access programs. We work with a handful of governments, starting with India, but also working with governments like Singapore, Malaysia. There is state governments in Australia. We work with Canada. We work with UK, Wales, Northern Ireland, quite a few markets that we work with where we run inbound and outbound market access programs. And in that same vein, while we partner with governments, we run our own programs as well. So we have our own India market access program that goes under the Gateway 91 branding. We have done several virtual editions, but we also operate on-ground in-market programs. And Startup Bridge is our program to actually enable companies from across the globe to access high potential markets. So we have done multiple editions of Startup Bridge Canada, which is one of our flagship programs. We have run programs like Startup Bridge, FinTech Startup Bridge ASEAN. We have run Startup Bridge Pamoja. Pamoja means united in Swahili, so programs in East Africa. So a fair bit of those international market access programs. But if you see the slide here, we do a lot of programming with governments which enable market access for companies. Rahul, if you can just go a slide above. And this is broadly what our spread looks like. The regions which you see marked on the world map are pretty much regions in which we operate some program or the other, either our own programs, partner programs, and this kind of spans multiple geographies, 16 of them and growing, more than 40 odd strategic partners that we engage with. And this has provided us access to more than 35,000 odd startups, which are part of our extended community. Many of them which have applied into our programs, but also other companies which stay connected to us in different ways. Rahul, if you can push the slides down. Next one, please. Yeah, so that brings us to Startup Bridge GCC. I'm sure that anyone who has kind of logged into this session would be very well aware of what the GCC is, the Gulf Cooperation Council, comprising of 6 countries, starting with UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Oman. And Startup Bridge GCC is essentially a program which opens up market access to fast-growing companies which see this fast-growing region as a place that they want to call home, that they want to expand into. With that, before I jump into what the Startup Bridge GCC program is going to shape up like, I would like to dive into the webinar, which is focused on Opportunity GCC. And as I introduced our speakers briefly, I'd pass it on to them to talk about who they are, their background, and then we dive into the Q&A and the interaction. So Daniel, maybe we can start with you.
With great pleasure. Ajay and team, thank you for having me. And dear audience, thank you for dialing in at such a great frequency today. Very briefly, my name is Daniel, originally based out of Germany. Originally, I come from Germany, but I used to live and work across Middle East and Africa for 18 years. Was based out of Dubai, was based out of Lebanon. And during that time, I've done a lot of work across the GCC, what Ajay just described, but also other emerging frontier markets, including India. What I look forward to discussing with other esteemed panelists and you today is about the differences of the various GCC countries that Ajay referred back to, and what opportunities they present both as access to market, access to capital, these markets itself, and as launchpad for the region. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Ravi, if you can introduce yourself.
Sure. Sure. Thanks, Ajay, and thanks, Startup Rescue, for having me here. Right. So I'll just talk about myself. Right. So I've been into the fintech space from almost 15 years. Right. Currently, I'm a founder of a company called Cefixpay, which is a platform and the API infrastructure provider company. Right. So we have started our journey for the UAE market, or basically I can talk about the GCC market almost like 2 years back. Right. And we are able to grow almost 100% year on year, like over a period of last 2 years. Right. I'm here to contribute, what are the opportunities which are there in GCC market, and what are different growth which are available for the fintech industries. Right. Those can be leveraged. Right. Whatever the Indian companies are there, they can leverage their strengths in GCC market, because it's very easy for the Indians to access. Right, because which has got all the necessary requirements for any kind of a startups to start a business in GCC. The rest, of course, we can discuss during our discussion. Yeah, thank you.
Great, Mayank, yourself.
Thank you, Ajay, for this opportunity, and thank you everyone for joining in today. So I'm Mayank Singh. I represent Zimyo over here. I head the global sales. So I'm based out of Dubai, and I keep traveling between Delhi and Dubai. So currently, I'm based in Delhi right now. So Zimyo is a HR tech platform. So we are headquartered in India, and we are globally selling. We have around 2,000 plus customers globally. And we started our GCC journey around 1.5 years back. And in this short span of time, we have added around 200 plus customers. So I'm happy to share our journey, how as a startup, we have a 5-year journey as a startup. So how we paved our way into the Middle East market. And I'm happy to share that experience so that the other startups could leverage the same opportunity. Thank you.
Awesome. 5 years is a lot of time in a startup. You see more than a journey in 5 years. And Daniel, with his experience of wearing multiple hats and working with several startups, would attest to that. 5-year cycle is a big one. And Ravi as well, of course, building your own startup. So coming to the topic, the good thing is, with Daniel having spent several years in the region, Ravi in and out, but building the market for fintech, which is not a flavor of the season, not the flavor of the decade, but it's an ongoing one. And wherever there is people, there is HR and Zimio. Obviously, the work that you're doing, it again cuts across different industries. So it's fairly interesting. And if you look at the broader GCC region, the kind of transformation it's undergoing. Go back 30 years, it's pretty much an oil-based economy. But if you look at most of the developments which are taking place over the years, I think all the 6 countries in the Gulf Cooperative, they're pretty much diversifying from this old oil-based economy, but also the way they've transformed from a governance standpoint, transformed in terms of the economic opportunities, the kind of quality of life that we keep talking about, which is top-notch, becoming global technology hubs. I think there's a lot of these changes which are driven, keeping technology at the core of it. And one of the most important thing is to get more people excited and to come in, and that's also by becoming a destination. People from different parts of the world are moving in, and that's why the talent pool is fairly diversified. So there isn't one ethnic or one specific kind of talent pool that you find in the extended GCC region. Starting with UAE, where the journey has been several more years compared to some of the others. But the way the talent pool has shaped up, whether in terms of different industries, whether it be creative, if you look at it from a technology standpoint, if you look at AI, ML, smart cities, cybersecurity, all of these are kind of pretty much flourishing. And there's a lot of regional cooperation or partnerships that are kind of taking place increasingly. And this is extending even beyond just cooperation within the GCC as a region. It is also a lot of cross-border, a lot of international. From your perspective, and I'll come to you, Ravi, first on this one. From your perspective, why should startups, you having built SafeXpay, and we met a few weeks back at your office, and we were having this conversation. For many fintech startups, India is the place that they want to come because this is where they see opportunity with 1.4 billion people. But for someone like a SafeXpay and giving this perspective of how the GCC is evolving, why do you think startups should be excited about these developments?
So thanks, Ajay. Right. So if you talk right. So what is happening, right? You rightly said, right? There is a cosmopolitan population which is there. The different talents are available, right? For Indian people, right? If you talk about the product and services which you have built up, and they have aspirations to go to the international markets, right? So they always want to try with the people where they have got a cosmopolitan kind of a population, right? So there, let's talk about if you have got a good market fit in a market like of India, right? And you want to leverage your strength, correct? To mostly on an international region, of course, you can of course choose mostly the GCC, because GCC gives right from an oil economy. Now they have more of a innovation kind of economy, right? You can try more of your new products, right? I can give you some of the examples which we did in UAE, right? So that is also leverage us. So like, let's talk about, we are basically one of the pioneers in terms of offering the white labels platforms to the banks and the fintech companies to the Indian markets, right? That's how our journey started. And today, right, our journey for the UAE market started with, of course, offering a white label platform to one of the largest bank in UAE region, right? And today we have got many banks as our client in GCC region, right? Plus we have done a lots of innovations, likes of a metaverse kind of innovations, right? Which that kind of a market has opted. So we have created a platform in a Web 3.0, where apart from like buying or experiencing the product, right, you can also make the payment using your typical payment options like of credit cards, UPIs, and all. So that's the kind of innovation which we did almost 1.5 years back for the GCC market, and right, and that is now getting picked up by most of the GCC countries, right? So that's what I'm talking about, right? So it's always good, like if a companies are more focused toward international expansion, I think GCC market is good. more in terms of experimenting the product, right? Launching the product, right? Third is like, of course, you will also get an interest more from an investor's point of view also, like, right? And lots of like accelerators or incubators are available, right? If you talk about ADGM or you talk about Saudi markets or you talk about UAE, like DIFC kind of a thing, where they offers lots of perks, startup perks, right? Which you can leverage more in terms of expanding your business in case you have got an international interest.
Cool. So one is the economic opportunity itself, but beyond that, from an adoption standpoint, right? I think that is what you alluded to. And in terms of the infrastructure that is available, in terms of
Right.
a pathway for companies to kind of get in, whether it is government itself kind of playing that role, but also other actors who are kind of creating those opportunities for companies to easily kind of get into the market. So all of this kind of put together is what kind of makes it exciting for startups to look at these markets. So I'll take it to Mayank in your journey as Zimyo. Again, a relatively young startup, 5-year-old, and for startups it is not always kind of easy to make the decision as to which market to get into, right? In many cases, people make decision on the basis of what probably similar companies in your domain are doing. But a lot of times that's not the emotion to get swayed with. So for Zimyo in this journey, I think a lot of things that Ravi alluded to, and some of the things that I began this conversation with, wearing a Zimyo hat, but also as someone who is an operator within a startup, why or what are those exciting aspects when you look at the extended GCC region, which should make it exciting for startups to start looking at GCC as a market to go in? Because traditionally, if you look at emerging markets, if startups are looking at going international, the first market they want to tap into is North America. It's a high-paying market, and Europe is another one. But if you were to look at market like GCC, I mean, why should startups get excited about the region?
Yeah, rightly said, Ajay, right. As you clearly mentioned in the start also, like GCC is no more a warm market. It is totally a hot market right now. And for us also, and for startups also, they should be super excited to get into GCC. Now, everyone is going, like every startup would think like the North Star is to go into North America. That is where they want to end up. But to start the international expansion, I think GCC is the starting point which they should leverage. And they should leverage the biggest asset of GCC as well, which is the young and tech-savvy population of GCC. So they are very open and they are very eager to adopt the new innovative products in the market. So for a startup, that is the biggest market which they can explore. Right, apart from the government, like Ravi also mentioned, the government support for entrepreneurship, which is there in the GCC. So many tax benefits, tax laws, policies are there, which are very friendly for startups. And apart from that, the free economic zone, which are there, if you talk about UAE, if you talk about Saudi, so there are so many economic zones which are free. Like in India also, you have the SEZ. So government is supporting them. So all this gives a very strong base for the startups to develop their global startup, right? Apart from that, like, as you know, like the infrastructure, which Ravi talked about. So GCC, as we know, has a highest penetration rate in the internet usage as well. So for any tech startup, having all these things, like this is a conducive environment, which any startup would dream of. So I think that is why GCC is the best place, apart from North America, obviously, to start the international journey.
Great. Daniel, you're the wise man in the room now. You spent 18 years in the region, and this spans across different organizations, working with companies of different scale, coming from different industries, right? Seeing this close to 2 decades, what is making it exciting for not just startups, for companies to get into the GCC?
Thank you. Thanks for asking, Ajay. And I want to say one thing. Lots of things have changed over the past 18 years. I said to Ravi earlier, I just came back yesterday morning. I was 10 days in Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Jeddah. So I'm having like the latest one. I still go on a regular basis. So there's few things. And I allow me to be a bit controversial. Okay, first, sure. I'm with all of you as far as GCC is concerned. Young population, technology. I want to add to that regulation. So you have certain free zones that we spoke about, where we talk about English common law, so that if you're a startup, you set up shop, whether it's in Saudi Arabia or UAE in the specific jurisdictions, you have the ability to do business with North America, England, and many other clients, potential clients around the world based on the jurisdiction. And if you look around the world, often jurisdiction is a big risk factor if people want to engage with you or not. The second part that I want to talk about, if you look at GCC, and earlier you talked about a 1.4 billion population in India. So if you talk GCC, so you're not talking only, it is Saudi Arabia, or is it the UAE, or is it Oman, or is it Bahrain? No, it's 60 million people. But here's the point. When we talk to governments and startups, and we look at successful companies that became unicorns in the region, it is the GCC, but GCC only as a launch pad. Ultimately, what you're looking at is at 450 million Arabs. You look at the Arabic population of approximately 450 million people that spans from Morocco, Algeria, Egypt, the Levant, and in the GCC. So you're looking at the MENA region, and then ultimately MENA, Turkey, India, and Pakistan. So the idea really that we see the common thread is to set up in one of the jurisdictions and countries that works for you because of access to market that you touched on, but also access to capital. So you have the opportunity, if you look at getting to customers, but also raising capital to grow your business. And from there to utilize the infrastructure that also Mainak and Ravi referred to in order to sell regionally. I call it regional, not yet globally, but regionally. So these are a few points that I think make it very attractive.
And these have kind of each one of these that you spoke about, Daniel, they've all kind of over the past 2 decades, they've all kind of changed to a large degree, right?
The biggest change that I've seen over the past, let's say, 18 months, and that's an encouraging one, is that from a kind of a regional competition, right? Because there is some sort of dynamic. Who's going to Riyadh, who's going to Abu Dhabi, who's going to Dubai, etc. And I've seen a more of a collaboration style. So we see companies that set up in Saudi Arabia are now doing business from Abu Dhabi. Companies that set up in Dubai are doing things now in Saudi Arabia. So we see this dynamic going in harmony and collaboration across the GCC. I think that's the biggest change and positivity of it, how it acts really as a one ecosystem.
Yeah, and I think it's very important, right? Because a lot of times, and particularly when you look at it from an economic blocks standpoint, the reason, I mean, if you were to look at the Southeast Asian market, I mean, someone might choose a Singapore or a Vietnam for XYZ reason, but then the strategy that they adopt is a Southeast Asia strategy. Likewise, if you look at the EU, I mean, people might choose country X or city Y to kind of be based out of, but the larger economic opportunity that they're looking at is probably being able to tap into a borderless kind of economy or economic bloc, and that's what kind of drives company when they start making those decisions to move international. And I think it's a very strong point that you bring in the regionalization or the regional partnerships, and wearing that hat and not just looking at a country in isolation, but rather looking at the Arab population, which you said is 450 million. It's a sizable one, and that's where probably you could be based out of, say, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Riyadh, wherever. But if you're looking at the broader MENA block, I think it's a fairly large one to build for, and in that way the collaboration and probably even the kind of business style is pretty much which kind of cuts across, which makes it easy for companies to kind of scale over a period of time. So thanks for those points. I'll continue with you, Daniel. So I mean, your experience is now of course Techstars and companies that you engage with, which are pretty much emerging tech companies. But probably if you were to look at it over the years that you've spent in the region across countries, let us look at 2 things: the advantages and the obstacles. Because it's not easy, right? I mean, going international by itself is not easy. Language is one thing, but culturally, how countries are set up, the business environments, the way they are set up, what are the do's and don'ts, or the advantages and the obstacles that you would bring to light when someone wants to do business in the GCC region?
Okay, I want to give you an emotional answer first and then the rational. Okay, because we touched on a lot of rational positivity of why going there. I want to underline it with emotional positivity. It is around the world, probably one of what I've experienced among the most friendly, welcoming, generous, and hospitable culture. So if you are humble, open-minded, and respectful, no matter where you come from, I feel it's very welcoming, and there is a desire of attracting foreign founders, startups, and businesses to the region. So that is already very, very encouraging. So you have to be, of course, like everywhere, nuanced and respectful to the culture. And if you do that, think you have a very good time. You have a very good time meeting wonderful people and getting access to individuals, whether it's on the government, royal, VIP, business leader level, that would normally be very, very difficult. The one thing that I want to point out as a rational consideration is cost of living. It's cost of living and cost of business. So we see various opportunities of setting up a business, whether that is, I think Ravi mentioned ADGM, Abu Dhabi Global Markets in Abu Dhabi. You look at Dubai with, I don't know, 30 plus free zones, and then there's the wider UAE, Ras Al Khaimah, etc. And you look at Saudi Arabia, you have to do your homework on what's the cost of setting up a business, of renewing the business, what license is required, and cost of living. And there's a big difference between Dubai, Ras Al Khaimah, Sharjah, or Riyadh. So that is something I want to point out, and you touched earlier what I've seen changing a lot. And there is a price to pay for convenience, market access, etc. And there's also opportunity to how should I say, to economize. So the beauty is there is various options. So you can do, and without mentioning names now, but there is a wide scale of having the red carpet utmost license set up and to bootstrap almost and economize your scaling efforts. So that's the one element I want to point out there. And the last one, and I said it from two perspectives. I once had my own business I was running for 6 years out of Dubai at that time. Be mindful of whom you want to attract as your customers and investors, because these customers and investors are going to ask you, where are you registered? What do you bring to the region? Because oftentimes, especially on the investment side, their mandate will be to support local economy to an extent. So when you do your due diligence on where to set up your business, think about where do you see your potential clients and investors, so to utilize your business setup as a credibility to attract those.
And if I were to just extend the same point around the ease of probably incorporating in a jurisdiction A vis-a-vis jurisdiction B, because I think a lot of times we look at, as entrepreneurs, we might just look at the cost of setting up a business. The cost of obtaining the license might be a very small fee, but a lot of times the cost of doing business in the longer run, the kind of cost that you incur probably on accounting, on tax, and all of those things. As startups, you're hustling and you're looking at that new opportunity, which is probably, I mean, you touched upon the funding aspect. A lot of the startups which are looking at incorporating or getting into GCC probably feel that being there will allow them to kind of attract capital from the region. But at the same time, they do not really give it a lot of thought in terms of the cost of doing business, which probably has a lot of factors to it, rather than just an office space or the business license. Also, the cost of winding down, right? Over a period of time, and startups don't think about it. They get into a market, they register, they open a bank account, they're hustling, but after a year and a half, you run out of steam and you need to wind down. And that's a big problem as well. So would you want to kind of touch upon those things, the cost of doing business and things that they need to kind of be aware of?
I keep myself very short, and I think Ravi and Mike have more credibility on that subject because they're running actually business on the ground. But I will say two things. Number one, there's a lot of government incentives in the different countries, whether these are accelerator programs like Techstars, but whether these are accelerator programs, incubation initiatives that are run in Bahrain by Tamkeen, Hub 71 in Abu Dhabi, different Riyadh-based, Dubai, etc. So take a look at that. Lots of subsidies and encouragement incentives are there in place. There's a lot of localization programs where, based on deliverables, as in your license, your first employees, etc., you may get grants. So not everything is equity-based. So there's grant and support systems in place. That's one. The second, and that's the last point I want to make to that, is because Ravi spoke in the beginning about international market population and product market fit. You have to differentiate between Saudi Arabia, Oman, and the remaining GCC. So if you go to UAE, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, you probably can go and set up the business with less encouragement as far as local population is concerned. If you set up in Saudi Arabia, you will be encouraged to make Saudi hires, just because the demographics are very different. If you look at the 30 million population, 70% below the age of 30, and there's a big encouragement to encourage them to parts of entrepreneurship. So when you think of cost of running business, language, etc., if you set up in Saudi Arabia, you will have to plan that your first couple of employees will be young Saudis from university or from other startups, etc. And they speak great English and Arabic, etc. But you will have less flexibility there from an employment perspective, potentially, as you will have in UAE.
Thank you. Thanks, Daniel, for that. Ravi, I'll come to you on a question which is very SafeXPay kind of oriented, but to whatever Daniel just spoke, and my question to Daniel, I mean, in your journey of building SafeXPay in the region, any advantages or obstacles that you want to kind of touch upon, add to what Daniel just mentioned?
Yeah, so I can talk about, like, of course, Daniel has covered most of the points, but there are like two types of businesses if you talk about in GCC point of view. One is a regulated business, second is a non-regulated business, right? So both of them have got a different cost, right? So if you go for a regulated business, you need to basically satisfy the criteria of your net worth, then the regulatory licenses, requirements, and everything, right? But if you talk about a non-regulated business, you just have to set up a license, right? Which is, of course, not only one cost, which is like a one-time cost, it's like a every year renewal cost, which you have to consider, right? Because if you talk about India, right, once you set up the company, you don't need to pay like every year renewal cost kind of a thing. I think that is the biggest differentiation which we have to talk about, right? And Ajay, since you mentioned like the winding of the business, right? It's of course easy if you talk about India point of view, right? But vis-a-vis, like if you talk about UAE, right, if you have to do a small changes, right, it's very important, right? There is a cost involved for every small changes. Even you want to modify a director's names, address, you have done any kind of a mistake, you have to pay a cost if you're going for GCC, right? But if you talk about India, right, it's like pretty open, right? The cost is very minimal and all, right? Then of course the living cost, if you talk about, right, living cost is higher vis-a-vis, like if the companies are moving from India to GCC, but if the people are coming from, let's talk about from America or maybe like from Canada or UK, it become much cheaper for them, right? So all those things needs to be considered, like while you are setting up a business, if you talk about in GCC, right? The second important point is just like Daniel mentioned, right? Of course, Saudi is a totally different market, right? We just started with the market, which is just started, right? Right, and lots of fintechs have just started building up their, basically setting up their office and all those things, and the guidelines have just started flowing in last 18 months, correct? But if we talk about UAE being like a market which is like a fairly mature vis-a-vis Saudi, right? Right, because it's like they have lots of things set up, like more in terms of free zones you talk about. Then they have like markets like of DIFC, right? Where a fintech company can register themselves at a very lesser cost, right? So I was a part of Money 2020 Singapore. I met someone someone from DIFC. They have suggested me like, why can't you come down to UAE and set up your company? And they have offered me a very discounted price to set up the company, right? And luckily, it was like a COVID time when we have got our first bank closed for that particular reason, right? And that's how our journey started for SafeXPay in 2020, right? And we have got a like lesser price, and we got the entry into that market. And today we have got many clients. We have also set up a business where we basically do a merchant acquiring more on a POS side, VG sides and all. And then we realized there is a tremendous potential, like from this market, you can expand to MENA region, right? Which is like Middle East and North Africa, right? And these markets are like emerging markets, right? These markets are lacking a lots of technology and innovation. It's like good to expand or test your product from an international point of view. And then later on, you can basically transfer most of your things to the fairly mature market, which is more like UK, Europe, or a American market kind of a thing. So that's how like we build up many platforms. We have expanded into these regions. And today, if you talk about SafeXPay, we have got a presence in 5 countries, right? But the other countries in terms of GCC, if you talk about, right, GCC, UAE and Saudi, these are two different directions altogether, correct? Because if you go to Saudi, it is totally right, which like just Daniel mentioned, once you are setting up a company, you need to have a key person from Saudi only, right? Under one Saudi, you can have only 4, basically the other countries' visa you can get it, right? So that's the important point, right? So whenever you are, let's talk about, you want to build up a team of 20 people in Saudi, you need to hire at least 4 local guys there, right? So that's a very important point, right? And then once you're expanding, like other markets are very small markets, right? So I think the people who wants to expand to GCC, right, they can set up their basically company mostly in Saudi.
Webinar.
And later on, they can move to other small geographies.
Participants, it's a
I
sincere
think
request.
Anand was saying something. Yeah.
If
So
you
right,
can
so that's
please keep
my
yourself
view,
on mute.
right? So instead of like spending same amount of capital or more capital into smaller GCC countries, you can expand mostly to the countries. My first preferences would be UAE. Then you can move to Saudi. Then you can move to Qatar and Oman, and then rest Kuwait and Bahrain you can follow. That's your thing because that has got a very limited population size. So that's all from my side.
So Ravi has basically charted out a GCC strategy for anyone who's joined in. This is how you need to do it. But no, Ravi, I think some of the pertinent points that you make, right? I think a lot of it was mirroring, echoing what Daniel mentioned. But as Daniel also kind of referred to as an operator of a startup, a fintech, a regulated business, like you said. I think having those first-hand experiences, whether it is, I mean, we'll talk to Mayank on the topic of hiring and people because that's the business that they are in. But I think it's a very important aspect that you need to consider when you're expanding. I mean, as a founder, you can make the initial journeys and vet the market and try and understand what opportunities exist. But you need to hire locally, and
Right.
it has to be strategic. And second, I think when the regulation requires you to kind of hire the key personnel, I think it requires a lot of investment of time and effort because you better do it right, because unwinding stuff or probably kind of redoing stuff is expensive both in terms of
Correct.
experience and money. So you don't want to kind of just go by hearsay, but you actually spend a lot of time because like you kind of alluded to markets like India. I think a lot of things you can get away with at times, but I think in the GCC, if you look at markets like the UAE and Saudi, I think things are, you cannot kind of take things for granted or too lightly, and the cost of redoing things is fairly expensive. You need to have experts and right people on your side. So right when you start. So continuing on that one, Ravi, I mean, if you look at digital payments, right? I mean, it's a gutsy decision for, and fintechs are like, it's not one or two fintechs. So usually when a fintech gets into market and if there's an opportunity, it's a swarm of fintech from different parts of the world. So if you
Right.
look at the way Saudi Arabia and UAE have been warming up for a variety of reasons, it's not easy as a fintech operating in a cost sensitive market like we spoke, like India, for you to take the decision during COVID times to get into a market and a market like GCC, which is regulated, which you cannot kind of just get away with by doing things. And digital payments, or if you look at digital financial services, it's a ever evolving kind of domain, not just for you as an operator, but also probably for the regulators. I mean, creating a sandbox as an ADGM is one thing, or having a DIFC is one thing, but they also kind of play by the year, and a lot of things are evolving. So as a startup, I mean, international company getting into a market like GCC, can you share some insights on how the changing digital payments and fintech landscape in GCC made you kind of take note and jump? And what are the things that international startups like yourself should kind of take a look at, which will allow them to kind of pursue these avenues?
Right. So if you talk about digital payments market, right? So GCC is mostly a credit card dominant market, right? So people generally use credit cards for making any kind of a payments now, right? And that market is growing, right? Of course, the market is very small market, but it's growing at a CAGR of almost like 15%, right? I'm talking mostly from GCC point of view, right? So market is growing, correct? And since you're getting a cosmopolitan kind of a public, right there, right? It's always good to test your product from a multiple geographies point of view, right. The payment is growing, the lots of regulations come into the pictures, right? So it becomes regulated, it's always good, right? That will build more trust for the people who are basically trusting on your company. Of course, the companies are coming from multiple countries also, right? Because it's more becomes like an open market. But it's bring, I don't know what the thing is like, what is the kind of differentiation you are bringing on that particular region, right? Because the market dynamics are changing fast, right? So how fast you can deploy your product, how fast you can make your solutions live, that also matters, right. So that's what we did, right. We started with some kind of a differentiations onto the product side, right. So since we felt like a GCC market is more of a credit card dominant market, we basically white label the overall platform, and which we deployed in a time frame of 4 to 6 weeks, right. So that become one of the case study for one of the largest bank, and later on we've expanded into multiple geographies with multiple banks kind of a model, right. So and now since we have built up a trust over a period of last 1.52 years, right, we've started not only a platform infrastructure's point of view company, right? We've also diversified more in terms of acquiring business also, that we started like some 4 or 5 months back. Today, if you talk about like from like, I generally used to go and sell into those markets, right? I used to spend almost like 5 to 6 months, mostly in GCC countries, right? Today, I don't need to go there, right? We have built up a fairly good team of almost 25 people, right? And they are able to do most of the stuffs, whatever the hard work which we did over a period of time, right? So of course, right, from a payments point of view, the market is still just started, right? I would say like that, right? And just like in India, if you talk about UPI, right, which is started almost 7 8 years back, right? And today it's like it covers, its target almost 300 million population which uses UPI. If you talk about India, right? Very recently in GITEX, the UAE government has launched their instant payment rail, right? Right. Same way the other GCC countries are opting and right, and they are trying to replicate the UPI kind of a scenarios in various parts of not only in GCC but across the world. So that is happening. You can assume like the payment is gonna grow, right? The people mode of payment, like from your typically like from your credit card, is changing it to now to basically your Apple Pay kind of a scenarios, right? To an instant payment kind of a scenario. We also basically invested into one of the company in Europe, right, where you can make your payment through your facial recognition. So that is also, we did a pilot in like in UAE, right? And we have also done a pilot with some of the banks, right? So we are planning to launch those more like a walletless or a mobile-less kind of a payment. You just have to go and make your payment using your face. That's the kind of innovation which we are trying to build up, and that is getting opted by most of the GCC plus MENA countries. That's how we see the payments growing over a period of time.
No, I think the infrastructure part that you spoke about, I think that's I think easier said than done a lot of times. If you have a product is one thing, but if you're actually building the rails of sort on top of which you can have further innovation, and particularly in a regulated business, I think it requires a little bit more deeper understanding of banking or financial service as a domain or an industry, and it's not as simple as just launching a product. And if you've also gone about on the acquiring side, it requires a lot of effort. It's not as easy because as a market, it's I mean, people might call India as a complex market, but if you look at the UAE, or if you look at countries within the GCC, I think the acquiring side of things also is not as straightforward or as easy. And like you said, particularly when it's a credit card or a plastic card kind of dominated industry, I think when you look at it from a digital payment standpoint, and if you're innovating, and just yesterday or day before, I was looking at some stats in terms of markets in which Apple Pay is present and the kind of penetration they have, and it's mind-boggling. I mean, the kind of numbers that they do. So to compete with things like that, it's not easy, and particularly when you're building a layer, so to say. I think kudos to you, and I'm sure that if there is anyone who's doing a fintech startup who could latch onto the rails that you're building or the work that you've already done, then you might be a good guy for them to kind of reach out to. I'll come to you, Mayank. How long has your journey been in the UAE? It's 2-3 years in the making right now?
Yeah. So we'll be completing 2 years in December, I guess. Yeah. So it's almost 2 years for us now. Yeah.
And when we spoke about the kind of journey that you've had and how you have probably gone about the GCC market, which is by virtue of building those partnerships, and Daniel also right up front spoke about partnerships, relationships, and even when Ravi was speaking about how they ended up getting into Dubai, meeting someone perchance maybe at a Singapore FinTech Festival and getting to know and kind of leveraging that. So you've spoken extensively about the kind of partnership that Zimyo has built with players in the industry. If you can share some light on how you went about building these partnerships and how or why for tech startups adopting this route can make it easier, not only for building those relationships and connections, but actually kind of cracking the code when it comes to GCC as a market.
Absolutely. So for us, like if you talk about Zimyo, so for us, like partnership has really worked for us if we talk about the GCC market. So see, there are multiple ways to enter a particular market. And for us, why partnership helped? Like as a startup, as you all know, like we were sitting out in India. We had no cultural or business practice information, like what is going on in GCC, or like what are the best practices, what are the regulations. So for us to understand, the best way is to reach out to people who are based over there. And that is where the partners come in. So for us, like what we did before entering the particular market, so the research is the first point, right? So if you talk about the local market, like knowing about the culture, knowing about the business practices, knowing about the regulations which are there. So the partner is the first person who can help you with all the correct information and a validated information as well. You need to have someone who is validating all these information also for you. Because some, like, you get everything on the Google as well, but you cannot trust each and everything, and it might not be updated as well. There are so many regulation changes and everything coming up every month if you talk about, right? So second of all is the industry events, like attend as many industry events and conferences as you can. You get to meet local people, you get to meet your future partners over there, will help you expand your own business, right? And if you're sitting out in India, if you're not planning to travel and maybe attend the industry event, use LinkedIn, use social media as much as you can to connect to local people, local entrepreneurs who are based out of the GCC. And they're so helping, like Daniel mentioned, they're so helping. There's so many people out there who are there to help you, apart from the government. So obviously, like Daniel and Ravi mentioned, there are so many government grants, there are so many support programs which the government is running. So obviously, these startups can make use of that as well. And the last thing which I would like to say is, for partnerships to work, you need to be really patient, right? You have to give time to it. It's not a matter of months in which the partnership will give you results. If you want to start partnerships, you want to get into a new region with partnerships as the first thing, give it some time, give it maybe 6 months at least to ripe, right? So that is how, like for us also, for Zimyo also, it took us a year basically for partnerships to come into effect and make it a profitable thing. So you have to trust the partner has to trust you. It goes both ways. So that is how I think it will work for startups if they want to choose partnerships as the way forward.
And which are the markets? And I think it's important, right? I mean, a lot of times. So one of the things that we regularly speak to when we talk to startups or when we talk to companies which are looking at growing faster, I think the first few sales have to be done by yourself, right? You cannot be just sitting here in India and anticipating that you're either finding a reseller, a system integrator. If you're not going to put in the hard yards, there's no incentive for someone to do that on behalf of you. And if your product is something which is having some doubts, and you're unable to kind of crack that, someone else is not going to kind of come and step in and do those sales for you and make you richer.
Absolutely. So I remember a point over here, like you have to be where your customers are, right? So that's the old saying which you need to follow. You need to travel. You need to meet as many people as you can, right? Yeah,
you be there. You just don't kind of form partnerships and hope that the partner will sell for you. It's never happening. So from that context as well, and you said upfront that for the past couple of years you have been in and out and spending majority of your time in UAE. Now, when it comes to Zimyo, is it just UAE that you have as your clientele right now, or you are having customers in other parts as well in the region?
No, we are expanding to all the 6 countries of GCC, and not only GCC, MENA as a whole as well. So, like I told, we have around 200 plus customer base, and out of which I would say 60% of the customer base is based out of UAE, but the rest 40% is like spread across maybe Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi, and other regions, Kuwait as well. Yeah.
So 200 customers in the extended MENA region.
GCC is what I'm saying,
GCC.
not the MENA region. Only the GCC region is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Not bad. That's, I mean, in a short span, you've managed to kind of
absolutely, yeah.
And everyone is recruiting people, and I think it's a good business that you are in as Zimyo.
Absolutely, it's like we talked, like it's a hot market for a SaaS company, like for a tech startup. There's no better place than GCC right now.
Great. I'll come to a common question now, and probably Daniel, I'll come to you with this one first, and then go to Ravi and Mike. So the last decade, and a decade is a fairly long one, because you spoke about even the last 18 months, Daniel, when you're talking, right? I mean, the kind of changes. So when we talk of mature customers, we're also talking of the consumer behavior, which kind of undergoes a big change. And particularly if you look at the hotspots in the region, they're so cosmopolitan. It's a melting pot of different cultures. So obviously, when you have a mix of cultures, obviously the consumer behavior in the market is going to change. But that also probably leads to new and favorable government policies, because you're trying to adopt the best of the lot and trying to stay on top of that. Then you have the leadership in technology adoption. I mean, if you go to Dubai, I mean, every single time you visit, probably even in 2 months span, you see things for yourself in terms of not just the infrastructure, but also the advancement in terms of technology, which is getting used across different industries. And then you have a lot of foreign businesses moving in again, which again brings in a lot of people from different parts of the world. Now, if you were to look at a company which is getting into a market which is so dynamic, where everything is on the move, everything is changing, what would be your tips? Maybe just a couple of points. What would be your tips or top advice for companies who want to be successful in the market? In a dynamic market like this, what should they kind of keep in mind in order to become successful?
Yeah, Ajay, thank you for that. I think I answer with 3 bullet points. I want to first amplify what Mainak was saying, because we as Texas, we learned that, I don't want to say the hard way, but we learned that you need to be present. If you want to do business there with any entity, public or private sector, you will see that the first question is, where's your office? Who is your team? So we have, over the past 2 years, we have been both working on programs, raising capital, and any meeting we had, these are the first few questions. So you have to be ready. If you want to generate revenue in the GCC region, you have to be ready of setting up your business. And that goes back to what I said earlier, to set up where you expect your biggest client to be, so to use it as a positive leverage. Now I come back to your question, Ajay, of what to consider. Now, we highlighted all these positive aspects in terms of regulation, technology, adoption, infrastructure, etc. But the consequence of that is it's a red ocean. It's a red ocean. It's highly competitive. Cost of doing business, something to be considered. So what I would do if I talk to a startup now, I would say, what vertical are you in, and what kind of GCC market or free zone or city is potentially most suitable for you? And if I can go in a couple of examples, and I thought about it before we came here today. So fintech and marketplace are, I think, currently the most funded and most active startups across GCC. But if you think of climate or anything, if you're in the business of climate sustainability, then maybe intuitively I would first think of Abu Dhabi versus Dubai, because you have ADNOC there, the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. So anything energy and the energy transition somehow is happening there. If you think of logistics, perhaps you could think of Jeddah, big port by the water, used to be a logistical hub. If you are into anything that is related to telecommunication, think of Oman and Muscat. So there's the Omantel Innovation Labs that is highly progressive. And because they are not yet at the stage where Dubai is, sometimes you will see more urgency to do deals, more flexibility when it comes to agreements and mutual obligations, but also for setup. So my recommendation is, keep in mind that whilst it's a hot market, it's also a red ocean, and look on who are not the first movers there, but who are potentially the laggards, for what reason it was, and the laggards who might be more flexible, more urgent in coming to the table, and where you could ramp up your business in a blue ocean setup. And the last one, because it didn't get much attention as we spoke, let's talk about Kuwait. Right? So Kuwait is not out there much in the whole startup and innovation discussion. But if you think some of the biggest family business, Al Shaya, is coming from Kuwait. Maybe your solution is something that serves the retail and food and beverage sector, where you could land there and you expand with them and across the region.
Well, I think the way you kind of broke it down in terms of sectors and how, based on which industry you're catering to, I think it's only experience of time that is spent on the ground that can give such insight. Because I think a lot of times it's important, because what kind of an ecosystem exists, and it doesn't have to be a tech ecosystem. I think even Mayank spoke about customer, you spoke about customers. So I think it's very important, depending on what sector you're focused on and how big is the customer base there, and that industry ecosystem which is around to support you, because it's not just going to support you in terms of revenue or customers, but also the kind of talent that exists. Because a lot of times, if you're doing something in supply chain or logistics, you do want to have a strong technology team and biz dev team and whatever, but what's more important is people who have been in the logistics industry. I think unless and until you have people from the core industry, it's difficult to build and scale that particular business. So that has to kind of be very critical, rather than having a herd mentality that everyone's going to Dubai, so let me also kind of just flock there. Instead, if I'm thinking from a sector standpoint, industry standpoint, I probably don't need to be there. It's not how fancy the place is, but where the business kind of merit. So thank you for making those points. Ravi, your comments on this?
So I would basically, for a successful business, I would prefer, of course, one point is very common, like which Daniel said, is like you need to have a presence in GCC, right? In case you want to expand, right? For that, you need to have a physical address, right? Because and a bit of team, right? Maybe like 4 to 5 people, because that is going to build up a trust with the people. Because any business, any country which you're expanding, you need to first is like the trust, because no one knows your brand there, correct? Right. So you need to basically build a trust. How you can build up a trust? Basically, once the people will start interacting with the governments, or basically you talk about any companies or the any kind of partnerships requirements, right? So that will bring trust. That is one. Second, I would suggest is basically since right, it's of course a pretty much competitive market, right? So you need to have a differentiation which you keep on like doing it, right? And launching the speed of your solutions more in terms of go live should be faster, right?
Mhm.
And third, you need to have a deep pockets. That is very important, because in case you don't have fundings, deep pockets at all, you cannot grow. Maybe like just like we were discussing about right, setting up the business, then we were also talking about the binding of the business, right? So that cost can become more on a higher side, right? So you need to have a three things pretty much planned, right, in terms of investment, in terms of your presence, building up a trust, right, understanding the market very well before entering into that market. I think these are the important points if you want to be a successful business in GCC. Yeah.
Great. Mayank,
Right,
from
just
Zimio's perspective,
adding on
Zimio's
to,
perspective and perspective
yeah,
of being in a people's business.
yes, adding on to just what, first of all, adding on to just Daniel and Ravi said, like maintaining relationship, and it's not only with customer, I would say, maintaining it with your investors and partners as well. Like so there are so many VC funds and angel investors based out of like GCC also, who are very keen to invest in companies who are based out of GCC. So you need to have a good relationship with them as well as your current investor. Like Ravi mentioned, you need to have deep pockets, right? So other than this, like you need to be like up to date with the latest trends and technologies as well, because you know GCC is like very advanced when it comes to digital infrastructure. So you have to be up to date with what is going on in your industry. You have to be like on your toes. Like you cannot be lagging behind, like 2 step. The GCC is always 2 step ahead. That's what I would say if we talk about the digital infrastructure. So that said, that is it from my side. Yeah.
Great. No, thanks for those comments as well. I think what we can do as and there have been quite a few comments, questions in the chat section, and I think Daniel has also kind of, while you're speaking, he's also found time to address a few of those questions. But if we have anyone who has questions that they want to kind of put out to the panel, maybe you can raise your hand or unmute yourself, introduce yourself. Maybe we can take a couple of questions before we jump on to the final section of today's webinar. Any questions?
Hi, this is Deepthi Jayakrishnan dialing in on behalf of Numantic IoT Private Limited from India. What are the top, thank you so much for a fantastic session. It's been a great introduction to the GCC. What are some of the top grants that you enjoyed in the initial years? Because almost all of you mentioned grants from government and or tax incentives. So what are the most commonly common ones that you've enjoyed, that your startup has enjoyed?
Daniel, go for it.
I cannot talk on behalf of a startup that enjoyed it, but I can talk about a few grants that I know are in place today as we speak. Is that okay?
Yes.
So there's one entity in Abu Dhabi. It's called ADIO. It's the Abu Dhabi Investment Office, and they are tasked with localization. So, for example, we are running a program with them that's focused on early child development, and I'm familiar with the grants that ADIO is providing there. And these grants, I think, can be up to I don't know, $200,000, 500,000 dirhams, so $150,000, $200,000 plus minus. And what it does is those grants are milestone based. So for example, once you registered your entity locally, you get amount X. Once you hired your first employee, you get amount Y, etc. So that is one grant system. Another one, if you go online and you look under Hub 71 Abu Dhabi, they just launched, I think last week, a new grant system, which is partially grants in kind, it's an office rent, license support, but also cash and I think convertible safe notes. And if you then go deeper and you look into other let's say more niche zones, I want to highlight Sharjah here. I'm not fully familiar with it, but I've seen generous programs there as well. So I think you will need to look state or government by government, and within UAE to, I think it's worthwhile looking into what does Ras Al Khaimah do, what does Sharjah do, Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and look at it piece by piece. But the average amounts, what I'm seeing is anywhere into the $50,000 to $200,000 ish. And some of it is cash, some of it is in kind. That's what I'm seeing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
One more question. Do feel free to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and point to one of the panelists.
Hi, thanks, Parul, for orienting on the many aspects of GCC. I have a strategic consulting firm and I have very organization to get into the various different part of the world. Just wanted to understand there are multiple startups into the enterprise B2B SaaS product. What is the kind of investment size you think that they should, take it as an initial investment before they try to do the first market at UAE?
Maybe I can take this question, right? So,
Sure.
Right. So since we are more of a B2B2B fintech SaaS, right? Right. So again, it depends like what kind of a category you want to focus, right? And you want to basically put up your team totally in India, right? Because if you're building up a SaaS, if you can keep your tech cost lower, right, it would be good, right? So which you can be like any part of the India, right? Any cities in India, right? So that will reduce your cost, and you can have a sales guy mostly sitting in like in GCC countries, right? So again, depends, like just like I said, right? You can have a sales guy maybe in two different geographies, which is like in UAE and Saudi, right? Which can cater, because each of these markets are like hardly a flight of like 30 minutes to 1.5 hours. That's a kind of flight which the sales guy can take and reach out, right? In case. So the investment sizes again depends, like it will range like because if you talk about our experience more, because we are a fintech company, right? So we basically set up the company, right? And we haven't put up an office and everything, right? I'm the first guy who has basically did the sales there, right? And we got break even in just like in my first sale itself, right? Because most of us product and technology getting calculated from India itself, right? So if you want to run the business from a long-term point of view, you need at least around $3 to $5 million, right? For next 3 to 5 years. So that's the kind of time frame which we can look and the investments point of view.
Thank you, Ravi. I think that's extremely helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool.
Hello.
So
Yeah.
Yes, go
Just
ahead.
one question. Ronak Hindocha here. I'm the founder of IFA now. We are a wealth tech company based out of India. And currently we are spending a lot of time and effort in understanding the GCC market. And idea is to build out a product for the wealth tech community, wealth management community out there in GCC. So any idea about how the wealth tech segment is shaping up over there, and any perspective would help.
So if you talk about Ronak, for wealth tech, I think the market is like fairly regulated, right? And the lots of startup which are coming is more in terms of doing the tech innovation, right? So I'm like I can talk about one of the fintech company where I'm an investor also, right? And so that is basically I can call more as the wealth tech, because they focus most on like investment. So that is called like just like all of us have heard a concept of buy now pay later, right?
Right.
This company is on a concept of save now buy later kind of a concept, right? Which is more like a form of wealth tech, right? So I'm on their advisory panel, plus I'm an investor also in that particular company, right? So I think it's like just like we mentioned, like it's more like you have to understand the cultural mindset of their people, right? And accordingly you can build up the tech. And of course you need, because these are like Like in India, we have stock markets, right? So there are stock markets. I'm not aware about any kind of a permission and all the license requirement, right? So those are something which needs to be finalized. But if you are, because Welltech generally come under fintech, right? So
Yeah.
it will require some kind of a regulatory license. That's what I can say. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, so we are planning to get registered at DIFC, and we'll take things forward. So
Yeah,
great.
so TFC has got like a startup perks, right, where you can
Yeah.
register at a very lesser cost, right?
Yeah,
It should be-
there is a fintech vertical as
Correct.
well, so you can
Correct.
get registered as a fintech. So we're looking forward to those things.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So
Ajay, do you have one more bandwidth for one more question, please?
let's go with one. Last one.
Thank you so much. In fact, sorry, I was talking. I was on mute. My name is Krishna Kumar. I represent a company called iCore Pioneer from India, and we are basically a platform-based services in sports domain, sports and fitness. So, just wanted to check with the experts in GCC. What is the scope of having a sports-based company in GCC?
I think
mean-
sport-based companies. Yeah, sorry. Daniel, you want to answer?
You go ahead, Ravi. I do.
So I think for sports, I think, right, of course, there are lots of leagues keep on happening, right? From a technology point of view, right, of course, the gaming, if you talk about gaming and the sports, right, so that is like, I think from a Sharia compliant point of view, it's not allowed. That's what I know, correct? But it's like, if you want to sell your technology, right, you can be like a software sports technology kind of a company, and you can sell your platform more in the form of SaaS to different European and the American market. That's what I can suggest. Yeah, maybe like Daniel, you can add something around it.
Yeah. So sorry, before Daniel answers, let me make it clear. Yes, it's a software-based, technology-based solution, and this is to automate the workflow of sports management. We do have a technology platform. Thanks, Ravi.
Thank
Daniel,
you.
please.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just one thing, because Ravi touched on it, I put a link here in the chat about like esports in general, esports and gaming. It's huge. It is the number one priority at the moment in Saudi Arabia, also because of the various applications it can be used for this. But if you look at sports itself, intuitively I would have said Qatar because of the World Cup and how Qatar is positioning themselves as a sport country and hosting also Asia Cup, etc. But I see more sport momentum at the moment in Saudi Arabia. I don't have numbers to share with you, but if you look at soccer/football, at the player transfers and what's going on, if you look at golf, if you look at the Formula One and eFormula One, so there is a huge momentum going on in Saudi Arabia about sports. I read something about the FIFA World Cup application, the Women World Cup application. So sport and the attraction of global sport celebrities across golf, soccer, UFC, the fighting, and it's huge. It's a very big momentum, big attraction, and it receives support and priority by His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince. So it's something to look at. And maybe last one, I didn't say it throughout the conversation. When you choose which place could be the right one, take a look at what are the government priorities. Because if you are able to support what is the Vision 2040 in Oman, or Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia, or Vision 2071 in UAE, there is a high likelihood that you will find following and endorsement and other organizations that support that it could maybe become your clients and partners.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Ravi. And Ajay and team, this is a really wonderful session because, especially special thanks to Daniel. As Ajay also mentioned, you are responding to few of these questions in between. That is not an easy task. And again, the experience was really reflecting in your answers. And I think, this will definitely help the participants, especially, we have few clients, even outside in Saudi Arabia, Badminton Federation is our client, and few clients are being using from GCC. But, I'm just getting the fact that we may have to have some entity there. So that is a point I'm also realizing now. So maybe as Daniel mentioned, where maybe Saudi is having lot of plans. I read through something. Because they have for 2030, they have a lot of plans in alignment with the fitness and other things. So once again, thanking everyone for this kind of arranging this session. Thank you so much.
Great.
Hi, could I ask a question, please, Ajay?
Okay, go for it. This is the last one, the absolute last one, because we still have a short deck to play out. So,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
okay.
So, folks, we provide sales intelligence. There we provide technographics data, and and we are doing it for SaaS industry, for global captive centers in India, and we have a demand coming up for Gulf also. And but we want to. My question to the speakers here is that what type of data is available easily that people use to do cold outbound or relationship based, and what is the data that we could provide that could be useful for vendors?
So I'll answer that. I'll start basically. So we ourselves are also running a lot of cold campaigns and everything. So a lot of data is easily accessible. Like I said, we have a lot of partners. So a lot of companies, I'll put in the chat as well. A lot of companies are there who are providing these kind of data for cold emailing, and they'll help you in cold emailing, cold calling, setting up the meetings and everything as well. So it's open data. A lot of companies and players are there. I'll put some in the chat as well.
Sure. Okay, great. Please. Thank you.
Awesome. So thank you to everyone who was having a question, and a bigger thank you to Daniel, Ravi, and Mayank for being patient, for sharing your views and perspectives, but also for answering the questions from whoever we had in the audience. We're also recording the session, so we are going to put it out to a larger set of people who originally registered for the webinar for whatever reasons they probably couldn't attend or make it. So I'm sure that there's going to be more uptake on this. So thank you so much for being such wonderful panelists. We'd now like to move on to the next segment, or the last segment of the evening, which is basically talking about Startup Bridge GCC as a program. Rahul, if you can, yeah, okay, there you go. You can go to the next slide, please. So what is Startup Bridge? So going global, I mean, from the conversation as well, and participating speakers, like whether it is a CFXPay or Zimio, would have realized that going global is no longer an option, and it's not that it's only extremely large companies or listed companies which are going international. I think from the get-go, particularly if you look at tech companies, they're building with a global market in their mind, and different regions that they have probably identified. And like even Daniel spoke about, how countries are probably planning their economic development, or what next 20-30 years look like, what mobility of people looks like. I think similarly, if you look at startups as well, when they start out, or when they're mapping out their vision, they're looking at what geographies it may not be imminent, but over a period of time, which are the most conducive geographies that they want to get into. But at the same time, while almost everything is available on Google, and you could look up reference stuff, people tend to look up stuff even for their health on Google, and try to become doctors, but a lot of times it's not the best way to treat yourself. So similarly, if you're looking at companies going international, companies going global, relationships are important. It's always, if you can lean on to someone who can not really give a reference, but at least a point of connect where they have experienced something, or they've built something themselves. I think it helps you in shaping your plan better. Startup Bridge is a program operated by Startup Rezo, wherein we run structured market access programs, which get you across to people who have built businesses in the region, mentors who are either domain experts or people in the know, getting to interact with different stakeholders. So I think one of the points Daniel put out there, and Ravi alluded to, was about how you can get into structured government-backed programs which allow you access to market. So Startup Bridge is all about bringing things together in a structured format as a market access accelerator, for lack of words. And the new program that we're launching today, announcing today, is Startup Bridge GCC. We have done several other programs in the past. Startup Bridge Canada has been our by far bigger success in terms of number of editions done, and companies that have successfully gotten into the Canadian market, looking at their North American footprint. We have similarly done structured programs focusing on fintech as a domain, Indian companies which are looking at expanding into the ASEAN region, understanding the nuances of doing business in the broader ASEAN belt. And likewise, Startup Bridge Pamoja has been our program to attract and enable companies from India who are looking at expanding their presence in East Africa by soft landing in Tanzania and Kenya and so on. So we have done similar programs in the past. And there have been success stories. There have been companies which have gotten into marquee accelerators, like companies which have gotten into programs like Techstars Toronto, companies which have by themselves gone on to kind of incorporate in international jurisdictions. Company like AirPay, which is a scale up, went through a Startup Bridge Pamoja program and has successfully managed to kind of get a license to operate digital financial services in Zanzibar and mainland Tanzania. So programs which have yielded the outcomes because they found someone who was a quality mentor, found someone who was a quality partner, or probably were able to understand the market better before they could take their first steps, or whether recruiting locally, incorporating locally, and so on. So there have been programs which have given out successful outcomes and results, and these are few of them. Rahul, if you can go on to the next one. So Startup Bridge GCC is an intensive 4-week program, and there are several partnerships that already have been built in place. And once this session is over, we'll be sending out further information material to people who registered. The primary objective of Startup Bridge GCC as a 4-week program is to run, I wouldn't say a curriculum-based program, but a program which brings in different stakeholders from the 6 different markets to talk about specific opportunities that exist, but also kind of the fundamentals of doing business in GCC by bringing in domain experts, consultants, and mentors, and successful entrepreneurs and investors to talk about the opportunities that are there. Not all sessions are just going to be one-to-many or in a workshop format. So the program itself is designed in such a way that it is interactive at several points. So while you will be having those workshops and domain-specific sessions, which are one-to-many of sorts, you're also going to have cluster-based approach where you're going to have domain experts, whether from retail, supply chain and logistics, fintech, and so on. So those would be cluster-based kind of mentorship, and then you're going to have those one-on-one mentorship sessions and one-on-one B2B interactions and introductions. So it's more of a comprehensive program. So just like you have any accelerator program, think of it as a market access accelerator, bringing together different stakeholders and different formats, which at the end of the 4-week will give you the tools to identify with how do I plan my next phase of expanding into the region? Which country do I choose? Which city do I go to? What is the best possible avenue for me to succeed? Whether it is through a partner-driven approach, by setting up shop locally, whatever it is. So it's a program which at a shorter duration gives you the means to define your go no go strategy, because a lot of times the market might be attractive, but you might not be ready or a fit for the market at that point in time. So Startup Bridge GCC or Startup Bridge as a program is designed in such a way that allows you to frame your go-no-go strategy. Rahul, if you can put the next one. So like I said, as a startup, there are multiple things. Your positioning and communication strategy, building your local presence, establishing a strong network. I think that's something which came across as a common point between all 3 speakers. The B2B connect. So depending on which industry you're in, something that we always try to do through our accelerator programs, whether it is in-person, hybrid, or virtual programs, is to establish and facilitate those first few B2B connections, which allows you to at least pitch and talk to potential customers, potential partners, because everything else is good, it's great, but having those first few set of potential customers is something which allows you to kind of move faster. The next one is selling in GCC, understanding what the investment landscape looks like, essentially soft landing your business. So we are also trying to bring in partners who would provide you with the physical kind of space to land your business and spend time on the ground before you actually start spending money to actually hire out an office or build a team locally. And lastly, access to government schemes, grants, offers, and all of that. So bringing in different partners who are quasi-government or government institutions, which kind of talk to you about what is it that they are bringing to the table and how can you leverage that. So the program is structured in such a way that it ticks several boxes, but at the end of the day, like I said, it helps you in realizing your goal of going global, of getting into a new region, and what are the tools that you require to succeed in the market. Rahul, next one. So this is what the timelines look like. The program itself is going to be operated in a virtual format in the month of Jan 2024, and we are going to post program have an offline edition as well, where a handful of select companies will be provided the opportunity to actually visit one of the markets and spend close to a week in market, getting to meet not only with the folks that you've interacted with online during the virtual program, but also make those fresh introductions and possibly plug it into one of the regional events, conferences, so that you're able to kind of get a bigger kind of play in the region. This is what the application phase or the timeline kind of looks like. You'll hear from Rahul from the team who's been the one who set this up. who will write to you more details about the program application and how do you go about it. And this is what the timeline looks like. So this time when the virtual program actually kicks off, which gives you enough time to kind of plan your course of next few months, but also the 4-week time commitment that is required to be a part of this virtual program. So you would have heard from Rahul as a primary resource, primary contact from Startup Rezo. So he'll be your main point or point person of contact, and you'll hear further from Rahul on the next steps. I'd like to just pause it over here. The program itself is for exploring avenues in GCC. If you have any questions, happy to take a couple of them, and post that we can interact online. Just feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question and point it to me. I'll be happy to take it.
Hey Ajay, I don't know if you can hear me. I'll turn off. I'm good to see you.
Thanks, Sunil.
I'm in just in a small airport in Western Canada, just heading on a little trip, but I wanted to say hi. And I saw you mention some, I guess, deal flow into Techstars, including Techstars Toronto, which is great. We're obviously now back looking for more startups, and our global thesis, our thesis here is investing in the global diaspora. So we do a lot of investing in Africa, direct investing in Africa, MENA region. So anyhow, we're paying a lot of attention, and we're seeing Daniel, my colleague, amazing colleague Daniel. So I just wanted to say hi. It's great to see you, and I enjoyed the talk.
Thank you. Thanks, Sunil. As always, we are your friends and always happy to kind of funnel good companies your way, the ones which get in, good for them to latch onto a Techstars global network. So always happy to be a part of that. Yeah, and he's in Western Canada, so that's like really early for Sunil, for sure.
Yeah, it's 5 a.m. Well, it's 5 a.m., but it's okay. I'm in an airport. I was going anyway. It's good timing.
Oh, okay.
I like joining. Yeah.
Awesome. Any questions? Awesome.
Ajay, could you?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Ajay, what about, what's can you share more light on how much, what is the payment plans and all for this? How much is the fees for this program?
Sure. So you'll definitely get an email from Rahul. The payment
Okay.
is one thing, but it's not the most important thing.
Yeah.
But you'll get an email from Rahul, which kind of lists down a whole bunch of factors. I mean, including the application process itself. So we are not just so we are looking to identify companies which have high chances of succeeding in a market like GCC. So pricing the program is one thing, but also being able to identify companies which have a fitment for that market is something that we would evaluate first before onboarding companies onto the program. So you'll hear from Rahul, and we can take this offline. Yeah.
And are you saying that, do the companies have to have the ambition to go set up there, or could the companies sell virtually itself?
So more than setting up locally. So while that is something that companies should kind of look at longer term perspective, I think is there a real opportunity for the kind of product services that you're building in a market like GCC? That is something that we would want to evaluate first. Setting up or not is of course an entrepreneur or a founder's personal choice.
Yeah.
But of course,
Okay.
I mean, like everyone in the panel kind of spoke about, I think being closer to your customer is necessary. And a lot of times for doing businesses in a particular market, being registered or incorporated locally always has its advantages. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
One more comment from me. One of the challenges that I've encountered that I wasn't anticipating, and you might have talked about this, I wasn't in the entire Zoom, but most of it I was here, is the currency devaluations. So when you look at investing in direct investment in Nigeria, massive currency devaluation against US dollars of Kenyan shilling, Ghanaian CD, and that is actually very consequential as an outside investor. You do see some positives in terms of rate and essentially the US money going further in the economy, but when revenue is local, it's a challenge. So in the GCC countries, I have no idea what the currencies have done there, or even what all the currencies are, to be honest. But what's your observation of currency risk?
So Sunil, you're cutting out for a big part of the question, but if I heard it right, you're talking about different markets in GCC and how their currencies have been performing, and given that they're mostly kind of oil-based economies, which over a period of time have kind of gotten into newer sectors of the new economy. Daniel, if you're still around, is there any comment or points that you have on that one, having been in that market for as long as you have?
As far as currency is concerned?
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as currency is concerned, it's actually one of the most stable regions to consider, given the fact that both UAE and Saudi Arabia's currency is pegged to the USD. And therefore, a lot of actually also of Sunil's investments from Africa companies and companies in the region, whether it's India subcontinent, but also the wider MENA region, are looking to set up companies in UAE or Saudi Arabia because of currency stability.
Okay, yeah, sorry if my headphones, I think they're not working the best right now, but yeah, it's currency, you know, in the Naira in Nigeria, it's been such a terrible currency. I think it's 1,000 Naira to the US dollar now. That's hurt these companies' ability to be businesses. Yeah.
And that's why actually, thank you, you're making the point, Sunil, that many of, especially Nigerian companies, but also Kenyan, are seeking to set up their second presence in Abu Dhabi or Dubai. So Abu Dhabi, ADGM, Ajay mentioned it a couple of times, is a very popular lending spot in order to create stability. And then they create another bank account there, and suddenly they have more stability when it comes to revenue generation, etc., by running it through that entity there.
Yeah. All right. So if you don't have any further questions, we'll call it wraps. Thank you to everyone who stayed back almost 30 minutes post the time that we had budgeted. Thank you so much, Daniel, for being there throughout, and to Ravi and Mayank as well. Everyone who signed up, people who registered, you'll hear from Rahul, like I said. But thank you for being a wonderful audience and participating in the true sense by having your questions either typed out in the chat window or by asking questions. With that, we'd like to kind of wrap the session and have a nice evening. People who are in other parts of the world, night, morning, have a good day. Yeah, bye-bye. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.